Now I will discuss the revisiting of critical discourse analysis, or in other words, the need for revisiting the agenda of critical discourse analysis based on certain criticism coming from people working in various fields of research, still related to critical discourse studies. To start with, I will just quickly survey various aspects of critical discourse analysis and its positive points, and then I'll probably look into those debatable or contestable aspects which have been criticized by people across the disciplines, and then we'll try to figure out that is there a need for revisiting some aspects of critical discourse analysis in recent times or not. CDA, to start with, has been the single most authoritative line of research regarding the study of media discourse, especially recently. After 2000, people working in media discourse studies have very welcomingly have adopted critical discourse analysis because this provides them some kind of very quick toolkit to analyze their data. They find already most of the things well planned for them, which was not the case previously in media discourse studies. The prominent names in critical discourse analysis, Von Dijk, Fairclough, Woodick, have been working rigorously with media discourses from multiple perspectives, especially the first two representatives, including Von Dijk and Fairclough. They have worked incessantly with media discourses and tried to figure out uh, various ideological, identity related, political aspects and various elements of its framing. Uh, if we just look from a broader perspective, we can see that Western model of Marxism, especially represented by Gramsci, Althusser, Frankfurt School, have been the catalysts behind the development of critical discourse analysis in Europe and in other countries in that region. Then these are the theories, or these are the schools of thought which are very vital in the development of critical social theory also, which may be called as the basis of critical discourse analysis. Based on this theory, we have been able to develop some critical approach to analyze language in various kinds of discourses. Fowler have been one of the proponents who investigated this critical approach, investigated media discourse from this critical approach, and tried to impress upon us that we need to move away from the traditional descriptive approaches to critical ones, which probably would help us knowing the language and its role in the meaning making process more deeply and socially in a socially more relevant way as compared to those approaches which were used to be used previously. Uh, and he brought in issues of power and ideology to the analysis of news reports, which was a landmark development. Serious scholars also share a distinctive concern with the relations between text and social processes through which or within which these texts are produced, and also the relationship between analysis and the practices being analyzed. How the role of even analyzer uh, may also be viewed here. Discourse is viewed as a type of social practice from the angle of critical discourse analysis, which itself is a very powerful agenda to look deep into various kinds of discourses, including media discourses. Each discursive event is dialectically tied to society. It is developed through dialects in a society, through various discourse development in a society, and that needs to be investigated in detail because it's constituted uh, within the social practices, and it also affects social practices in many ways. It involves a search for aspects of various dimensions of social reality that are obscured by an apparently natural and transparent use of language. So we see how use of language and the construction of various views of reality interplay with each other to create certain social practice or certain views about various social practices. CDA is then a reflexive and engaged form of social theory which keeps on engaging itself with various social practices, their formulation, their reformulation, their acceptance, negation, all aspects of its development. While being a fertile and stimulating field, CDA is not universally or entirely applauded by researchers across the world, especially people working in media studies and some in pure linguistics even have been criticizing critical discourse analysis for various reasons. Some among its critics believe that CDA is flawed or ideologically committed because they believe that the people working in the field of critical discourse analysis are already committed to a certain social ideology and based on which they try to interpret various texts, and that obviously according to them is biased or ideologically flawed because they already have an agenda. But this kind of criticism, I would say, is based on some half understanding of what critical discourse understanding aims at. I believe critical discourse analysis has a very clear social concern. When you have a very clear social concern to improve your society, try to point out certain weaknesses in your society, then you have to take a side. Then you have to take some social concern to uphold it, to bring it to the fore for the people, so that they may understand, analyze it, accept or reject it. You have to present a point of view. In that way, you have to be ideologically tilted toward something. You may not be interfering with the analysis because of your ideological, I would say, some kind of orientation, but still uh, you have to have an opinion there. So and that's a very fine difference in having an ideological orientation and then not letting it interfere with your analysis, but rather using it as a kind of uh, an additional gain to analyze something in depth is a very tricky area of professional research skills. And I believe most of the proponents of critical discourse analysis working in this field recently have been pretty cautious about such concerns, and they might have developed skills to not allow their ideological orientations affect their analysis to an extent which can make it biased. While others have also been commenting about the methodological diversity, and they recommend that such diversity should be overcome because this do not represent a uniform, understandable analysis. But again, it's a very debatable objection because this could be seen as a strength. Methodological diversity, instead of seen as a weakness, can be seen as a strength. Widdowson has and Stubbs have also been critical of CDA, and they believe that people working in the field of critical discourse analysis are doing only interpretation and not analysis. They just interpret what is being written. They do not go for that deeper explanation which calls for a good analysis. To which Fairclough has rightly been answering, and he believes that interpretive work that CDA offers is closer to explanation than subjective understanding. It's deeper and maybe to some extent objective also, based on certain parameters, academic research parameters, and it's not wishful or whimsical interpretation of a researcher that you would call a biased view. But this is based on some genuine concerns which are informed by some genuine knowledge. Most of these criticisms do not diminish the theoretical and analytical value of critical discourse analysis. It's still a very powerful and thriving field of study, and people, proponents of this field, are regularly answering the objections being raised against CDA. Methodological pluralism, I have already mentioned a while ago, can be seen as a strength instead of weakness because it gives researcher a variety to, to to incorporate into his or her analysis. It can allow researcher that essential freedom to understand the data from multiple perspectives and from multiple tools. Even in other domains of research in social sciences, we can see that diversity is becoming somehow a kind of strength for analysis instead of a weakness, which used to be a concern in previous, a very serious concern in the previous century. But this is being now understood in a different, from a different perspective. Diversity is now, in my opinion, is seen more as a strength than a weakness. And then ideological commitment to an explicit agenda, an explicit ideology is a very clear agenda of CDA. CDA probably was proposed for this purpose, to bring in change in the society, to highlight those manipulations, exploitations which are created, recreated through discourse, so that people may understand it. And a good critical discourse analyst probably feels that his or her primary job is to make people aware of those exploitations which are being done onto them with or without their consent. So I think in this in such a situation, with such an academic agenda, it's very commonsensical that you have certain ideological viewpoint already in your mind when you go for analysis. Philo has argued in favor of an integrated analysis of content and processes of production. He thinks that now CDA agenda should move on, and he should CDA agenda should not only look into the meanings and interpretations or analysis of content only. Rather, it in order to get a deeper meaning of the discourse, CDA should look into the processes also through which certain discourses are created. Then the reception, how it is meant to be received and how it's actually received, what kind of reaction it generates, and how the circulation mechanism has been decided, or is politically biased, unbiased, what has been done in this domain, are all may possibly all be the concern of future critical discourse analysis studies, especially in the sphere of media studies. All right. At the same time, Philo believes that this kind of deep concern has not been addressed in critical discourse analysis studies so far, and that leaves a gap which needs to be addressed in future. Therefore, this may be argued that there is a need to look for a comprehensive revisiting of critical discourse analysis, and especially as Philo has hinted, this kind of gap is more prominent in the analysis of media or news discourse. Therefore, we probably would argue, to sum this up, that we need to have a more invigorated, in-depth a toolkit or a methodology to analyze news discourse, a framework to analyze news discourse, which can help us understand it from multiple perspectives.